And it looks like we've hit the 9 a.m. start time, so we will get started with the presentation. Again, welcome to the Farm Program Decision webinar for the 2014 Farm Bill. I'm Jonathan Koppas.
Gary Schnitke.
And Nick Paulson.
And we will we'll go through kind of the standard process here. We've got some PowerPoint material to run through, and then we will also work on the online materials, the web-based resources that we have available, and kind of go through that. And, of course, if you have questions, type them in and send them in on your screen. Jim will make sure we see them, and we'll try to answer questions as we go, and then we'll certainly get to them, as many of them as possible. Before the time runs out at the top of the hour. We'll do our best. So with that, just always a reminder, we want to say thanks to our coalition who's been working hard for many months now to develop the education and outreach programs that you see and answer quite a few questions and deal with a lot of the complicated material from this Farm Bill. And speaking of material, here's the reminder of what we've got available. One of the main tools, or the main stop we go to, is the Farm Bill Toolbox. That's your one-stop resource where you'll find everything that we have, including the 7 steps for the decision, as well as archived webinars, the calculators, the online calculators, articles from FarmDoc Daily, and quite a bit more, including frequently asked questions. So the Farm Bill Toolbox, easy to find if you just use a search engine and look for Farm Bill Toolbox. So slight change to our deadlines. USDA FSA announced on Friday last week that they were extending the payment yields and base acre reallocation decisions, and they've lined up all the deadlines to March 31st. So at this point in time, everything has to be done by the end of this month. And we are today going to cover the programs. We're not going to go back through payment yields and base acre reallocation. If you'd like some information on that, go to the Farm Bill Toolbox. There are webinars, including one from a couple weeks ago that focused exclusively on base acre reallocation. Today we're going to talk about the farm programs.
Just on those, it's really easy to give the advice, though, on retain or update payment yields. You will either keep your current base yield or update it to the average from 2008 through 12. Pick the one which is the highest. So and do it. We would suggest doing that any case, because the only thing those payment yields influences PLC. We would still say change those yields. Retain or reallocate base acres. If you're in the Midwest, choose the one with the most corn acres, and go from there. And now we're ready for the program choice, which you still have some time on. By the way, many of you probably have signed up for this. If you did your first 2 decisions, you might have done the Ark County PLC and Ark Individual. You could still go back and change those if you desired. And you might have done the first 2 and waited on the third one. Again, there's just going to be a form where you go through for each program crop and say Ark County or PLC, or you're going to say the whole farm is an Ark Individual.
Yep, and we always want to say to everyone just to keep in mind that the FSA offices are going to be rather busy for the next couple weeks, and so your patience and understanding is going to be appreciated, I know, by them as they sort out a lot of paperwork and a lot of producers coming in here towards the end. Just the program details, as you see there on the screen in front of you, most of you are very familiar with this, but the Ark County program is a revenue program that uses the county average yields, uses those Olympic average county yields and the 5-year Olympic average national market year average price. That MYA is the market year average price. We've got an 86% guarantee and a 10% maximum payment used off that benchmark. And then they pay on 85% of the crop base acres. So Ark County PLC, by comparison, is the standard fixed price program. You have a reference price. It's set in the statute and it won't change. You see those for corn, soybeans, and wheat on the screen in front of you. A payment's triggered when that national market year average price falls below. And then it's also paid on 85% of the crop base acres. And as Gary mentioned, this is the only program in which that payment yield or that program yield that you could have updated, this is the only time it matters because it goes into calculating the payment for PLC. It doesn't have any impact on whether a payment's triggered, but if a payment's triggered because of a low price, then the payment yield is used in that calculation.
So right now, if you're looking at it, we're in the middle of the determination of the market year average price for 2014 for both corn, soybeans, and wheat for that matter. So when the market year average price is known, which for corn and soybeans will be the marketing year ends after August, right now USDA is projecting that the market year average price for corn would be $3.65. So you would get a 5-cent payment per bushel. Soybeans is over 10, right at $10, so there would not be a PLC payment. And wheat is right near $6, so there would not be a payment on wheat. So the only crop this year where it looks like there could be a PLC payment, and that's still sort of iffy, is because we still don't know what the market year average price is for corn, and it would be 5 cents per bushel. Multiply that by your bush payment yield, which you're either keeping or updating, and multiply it by 0.85. It looks like that payment for corn, well, it's pretty sure. It's going to be less than $10 an acre. So for PLC, the only crop of those three, corn, soybeans, and wheat, there could be a corn payment less than $10 an acre this year. And you'll see here in a little bit, we'll show you where the Ark County payments are going to be for 2014. So, and those payments are going to range from 0 to 80.
Depending on where that 10% maximum comes out. And then just the Ark individual program. Again, it's a revenue program, but this time you're going to use actual farm yields. But you're using the 5-year Olympic average of the revenues, so you're going to multiply the prices and yields together. And then the other complicating factor of this program is that you got to weight each one of those crops with base on the farm by what the planted acres were in the year. So for the 2014 crop year, it's what you planted. Same 86% guarantee and 10% max, and then the actual revenue, again, calculated using the national price and the actual planted acres, or the actual yield using those planted acres to weight it. And, of course, the big issue with Ark individual, and we'll talk about this a little bit again here as we go through the presentation, unlike Ark County and PLC, which pay on 85% of the base acres for the crop, Ark individual is going to pay on 65% of the total base acres on the farm across all those crops. So you're certainly giving up that 20% of the base, and you're working across multiple crops with Ark individual. That will impact the size of the payments, especially, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Nick is the SCO expert.
Yeah, we've already had the SCO question that we answered, but SCO, I guess the main points here, in addition to what's up on the screen, is just want to make sure everybody's clear that this is a crop insurance program. So this is not something you'll go in and sign up for or enroll in your at your FSA office. This is something you'd work with your crop insurance agent on. That being said, your FSA office program choice of the three that we just went through, Ark County, PLC, or Ark Individual, the choice you make there can impact whether you're eligible to use this new supplemental coverage option. So, and specifically, if you enroll a commodity on any farm in Ark County, or if you enroll a whole farm in Ark Individual, and again, using the term farm there to refer to an FSA farm, if you're enrolling any of your base in either one of those Ark options, that's going to impact or limit your eligibility to purchase SCO. So anything that doesn't have base and is not enrolled in a program, it doesn't matter. Any base that's enrolled in PLC, you'll be free to buy SCO on those commodities. But just know that there will be some limitations if you choose either one of those Ark programs in terms of using SCO.
And the big issue on SCO, right, is this county trigger. Is that what you're buying is a county trigger, but it still gets applied to your underlying crop insurance, your underlying APH number that goes for your farm.
Right, and again, this is a supplemental program, so if you're interested in using this, you will still be required to buy an underlying individual policy, specifically one of the combo products. So to even be able to have the opportunity to purchase SCO, you need to already be purchasing YP, RP, or RPHP, so either yield protection or revenue protection plan. And then SCO will just basically supplement the coverage on that individual plan. So SCO has an 86% trigger. Like Jonathan said, it is determined by what happens at the county, so either triggered by county yield losses or county revenue losses. So there has to be a county loss to even trigger a payment on SCO. And then you have coverage from that 86% level down to whatever your individual coverage level is. So if you're buying 75% RP, SCO would cover 86% down to 75%. Your payment is going to be based on your farm. So there's a payment calculation or a max payment calculation where they're using your individual APH yield. And then the indemnity will be basically a percentage loss that is determined at the county but is applied to that maximum payment. So for any farmer in the county to get a payment, the county has to suffer a loss, but then the actual size of that payment could vary across farmers within that county. But basically it's an all or nothing thing based on what happens at the county for those payments to be triggered. There is a premium associated with SCO as well, so you will have to pay a portion of that cost. 65% of the cost is covered by subsidy, so farmers will pay 35% of the premium for SCO, in addition to your premium cost, obviously, with the underlying individual insurance plan.
And those, but by the way, those premiums are we provide estimates of those premiums on our crop insurance section of our FarmDoc website. If we could go there quickly, and we'll go there quickly, and I'll just show you. If you go into our crop insurance section, and if you go down a little bit, you'll see our crop insurance premium calculator. And I'm just going to show you premiums we're in Champaign County. Just give you a feel for what this product will cost for corn. And we'll do this for a high coverage level. Here, this will give you revenue protection premiums. This will be without SCO right here, and this will be with SCO right here. So this is adding the SCO premium onto RP. Here, if we choose SCO by an underlying 85% coverage level product, it would cost us $16.54. 80% coverage level, $14.48. So this is RP from 80% down, SCO from 86% to 80%, $75.14.50. Here's one thing to note here, and this is pretty common across many Midwest counties. All the SCO type premiums are pretty close to the RP 85% coverage level product. You could get your cheapest at $14.50, but if you're at enterprise units, there's not a lot of difference there between premiums at 85% and SCO. So you can check that out for corn and soybeans on our website, and our crop insurance decision tool does that for wheat as well and other crops.
I think just to maybe emphasize what Gary's getting at is everything we've looked at, if you can buy 85% individual coverage here, you're not going to save a whole lot in premium by reducing your individual coverage and adding SCO. So comparing that 75% RP with SCO is $14.50 versus 85% RP at $15.12. That 75% with SCO is obviously a very different type of coverage. You got some county coverage mixed with a lower individual coverage level. I think most people who work in crop insurance would argue that 85% RP policy is going to give you better risk management because it is covering farm level losses rather than a combination of some county coverage with some individual coverage.
All righty. So certainly a lot there to help sort that decision out as well. Jumping back into the farm program choice, then of course always keeping in mind this fact with SCOs, you can't mix it with the ARC program. So if SCO is separate from this decision for March 31st, but it has impacts, or the more accurately, the decision you make by March 31st will impact whether or not you can purchase SCO. So as we look at the decision here between ARC County and PLC, A lot of what we're going to talk about today and that we've talked about in this decision time and time again is really how your price expectations are the key driver of this. Where do you think prices are likely to be in the next 5 years and how that impacts the program operation, the size of payments, whether or not payments are triggered, because we're using that MYA, and this is as we've said many times, this is a 5-year irrevocable decision, so you can't change it if the price situation changes. We're also going to touch on how yields impact and how you might think about weighing that aspect for the Ark County program. On one hand, you get some yield protection at the county level. On the other hand, a high yield situation like we've seen in this year will impact payments, and we'll show that. And then, of course, as we've said, SCO is going to factor in that as well.
We had a question. We talked about PLC and talked about it in terms of corn, soybeans, and wheat for 2014. What about Milo, grain sorghum? So the reference price for grain sorghum is $3.95.
Right.
And right now, USDA is projecting a range for 2014 of $3.55 to $4.05, which would put it at $3.80. And so there would be a Milo payment of 15 cents if we had that at that midpoint, $3.80. So Milo, it looks to us like would be more eligible for PLC rather than Ark County generally. So here we go.
Yep, and again, crop by crop, those reference prices are different and set at different levels, and we've talked about that in the past, and there's some articles out there about kind of looking through that. What we have on the screen in front of you is, again, sort of the first part of this decision that we've talked about between Ark County and PLC, which is what are your price expectations? So what we've got here is we're showing the three major market year average price forecast by the Congressional Budget Office, CBO there in white, USDA in yellow, FAPRI at the University of Missouri, theirs is in orange. And then a new feature we have on APAS, on the Agricultural Policy Analysis System, the online web calculator we'll show you here in a minute, is we've added in a futures hybrid price, and a futures FAPRI hybrid price. And so what this is doing is it's using the FAPRI price for 2014, and it's going out and pulling a raw price off the Chicago Board of Trade. This is using the February 23rd numbers to get a sense of how that futures price compares to the MYA prices. And of course, this is not an apples to apples comparison, right? This is it's a futures price. There's no basis adjustment factored in. It's the raw price off the market, but it's a sense, and I think we've talked about this a lot in the past, particularly with the old CBO estimate, that when you're making this decision and price expectations are such a big factor, I don't think anybody expects you to peg the price in 2017. It's whether you think the price is going to be in a higher range or a lower range or somewhere in the middle, and to give you some sense of those of that high-low kind of situation, we've got this futures hybrid in there that is typically a higher price. There's been showing up as a higher price. And so that just gives gives producers a kind of another reference point, if you will, something else to look at for the program operation. The other two lines then for corn is the reference price is that red dotted line. That's $3.70 a bushel. And then you see, and we'll show this on the Ark County PLC comparison tool, the 5-year Olympic average price using the FAPRI forecast. You see it starts off high at $5.29 and drifts down as you use those lower prices for FAPRI, and that 5-year Olympic average number starts to take in the lower prices. So you see this for corn as one comparison or one way to think about where prices might be.
And now we're going to show you soybeans here in a minute, but here's one of the key points is that there are some people with some expectations of prices below $3.70. And $3.70 again is the reference price. And if you believe that market year average prices, which is a average for a whole year, is going to average above $3.70 in each of the next 4 or 5 years, you would be in Ark County if you trying to choose the program with the highest payments. If you have to be below $3.70 before PLC will make payments. Yeah,
and then the other big factor that we'll talk about is how far below. At what point, it's one thing to be just below 370 at 365 or 360, but you've got to get far enough below the reference price for corn to make a difference in the two programs, and we'll talk about that as a breakpoint price. Gary mentioned soybeans. Here are the same set of prices with the futures hybrid for soybeans. The key really on the soybean is we've got only one estimate thus far, and that's CBO's most recent estimate, in which there's any price below the reference price. So there's that one dip below the reference price for soybeans in 2015, but otherwise all the forecasts make it hard to make PLC work for soybean base. And again, that the reference price is plugged in at the red, and the blue on the top is our 5-year Olympic average using FAPRI's forecast.
And
same thing for wheat, Gary. Here we see with wheat we've got more forecast below the reference price, and even the higher futures price is just right there at that reference price. And so for 5-year decision on wheat, it's kind of the opposite, right? PLC tends to look like a better, more effective option over 5 years, even though, as Gary mentioned earlier, 2014 is not going to likely see a PLC payment for wheat because our market year average prices are looking to be higher, and we're about towards the end of the wheat marketing year, right? So we're close to where you'd have to have a complete collapse in the market to ever get below 550 at this point for wheat.
So USDA is projecting the 2014 market year average price range for wheat to be between $5.85 and $6.15. So that would be a $6 wheat price. Their low end is $5.85, and again, it's a pretty safe bet where you will not see our PLC payments for wheat in 2014.
Right. You'd have to see something catastrophic there. But again, considering this that this is a 5-year decision for wheat, you're really looking at 2015 through 2018, where you think those prices might be, and you see the prices in front of you there. And Gary, I think this was a point you were making a little bit ago. Where would we see Ark County payments at a 365 market year average price using the recently released NASS, National Agricultural Statistics Service planted yield numbers for 2014?
So we are making the program choice decision for the years from 2014 through 2018, or the decision that you will make March 31 will determine the program choice for 2014 through 2018, and maybe a little bit longer than that, depending on where we're at. We're well into the 2014 year, so we know the 2014 yields, and we're getting closer to knowing the market year average price, which ends in August. The map you see to the right on your screen shows estimated 2014 Ark County payments. Ark County is a county revenue program, so this is showing our estimates of county revenue payments for 2014 on corn. Couple points here. It's Ark County, so we're using yields released by NASS in these calculations. We used a harvested price or yield per harvested acre in these calculations. In most cases, that will overstate the yield and understate the payment. So some of these payments, we may be actually understating them. But here's what you can see: the blue counties we're estimating are zero payments. So if you're looking at zero payments, that's central, southern Illinois, Missouri, southern Iowa, going into Kansas, and then there's a spot in Texas and spattering counties in Tennessee, North Carolina. All of those counties have had something much in common: very high yields. And just to give you a feel, in central Illinois, we're looking at many counties with yields over 220 bushels per acre. That 220 bushel per acre entered into the county revenue program calculation and resulted in zero payment. You'll notice that in much of the other parts of the Corn Belt, Iowa, northern, central Iowa, Minnesota's going to get hit the lottery this year. Nick Paulson's farm is family farm.
I guess they're hitting the Ark County lottery. They didn't hit the corn yield lottery.
That's true.
I don't know which one's better.
Which one's better? Which one's better is probably to be in Central Illinois this year. So
I think with those kind of yields, it's hard to argue that with how good of a year some of those counties have seen.
So for 2014, you can see there that we're going to have some counties, particular in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, northern Indiana, Nebraska, where we're going to have yield or Ark County payments that are close to the max, if not the max, in those areas where we're looking at lower payments where we had higher yields.
And this, Gary, here's your map sort of showing just how much of a difference we've seen on the yields for some of these counties.
So what we did here on this map is calculated trend line yield for each county. So this is taking into consideration the underlying productivity in each county, and then saw how the 2014 yield was above that or below that yield. And this pretty much tells the story. And you can make a comparison here between central and southern Illinois, where we're looking at yields that are 40-plus bushels above average or above the trend yield, and then go to Minnesota and northern Iowa, where we had yields that are 10 and 20 bushels below average. And again, Ark County is a county revenue program, so it's going to make higher payments in 2014 in those years. All of these, the payments you saw in this previous graph are based on a 365 market year average price. We don't know that yet, but it's probably going to be pretty close to that. Pretty close to that number.
Yeah, we've gotten through enough in the marketing year and enough sales to line that up. And kind of to just follow up on Gary's point, you can certainly see with the darker the blue is the higher your county yield is above trend, and you just see that play out in the expected payments. So those counties where that yield's well above trend are likely to see smaller Ark County payments, if payment at all. And we'll show that some more here in some of the web tools on how that's going to work. And we've got a good question about our corn payments that we'll show when we get to the comparison tool that will actually, I think, help explain that question too. So just hold on for a minute there. And kind of to maybe wrap up the point on what the county yields are going to do, we'll look at the two counties here in Illinois that are maybe the starkest example of exactly what we just talked about on those two maps. McLean County with a NASS expected yield of 217 bushels per acre, and DeKalb with a 192. And I'm not sure what more to say about what this screen shows. At a 365 market year average price and 165 bushels per acre payment yield, plugged into the comparison calculator, you see the difference between the two programs.
And again, if we have a 365 price, we would have a 5-cent payment per bushel. PLC would make a payment. Multiply that by 165, and we are also taking that by 85% when we're doing these numbers, because we're getting paid on 85% of the base acres. Again, McLean County, 217 bushel yield will have zero payment. And by the way, if McLean County gets any payment this year, prices have to do something very bad between now and then, and you don't want that.
We'd rather not see that. Exactly.
So, your McLean, Central, and Southern Illinois are looking at payments near zero. DeKalb County, on the other hand, had 192 bushel yield, which would be pretty good overall, but
that low price.
Yeah, but with the low price, but they're looking at a $79 per acre payment. So that explains those two counties.
Yeah, and the big difference that high yield can make in the Ark County calculation. So something to factor into that decision.
Yeah, we are getting a question in here about this $5.29 price for corn. I think we're going to see that in the Excel spreadsheet. If we're going to switch over to that next. That is correct. So again, for this Ark County program, it's a revenue program, so both price and yield matter. You can see the $5.29 there, pretty close to where the cursor is. That is the benchmark price for the Ark County program for 2014. That's based on the average of the prices in the last 5 years. That's going to be the same for all counties across the country. That is the national benchmark price for corn. What will change is the yield side of things. So yeah, you can compare that 529 in the Ark County program to the 370 reference price for the PLC program.
Right. This is the reference price in statute for corn. It won't change, and as you see, that benchmark price as you run in lower and lower numbers, then is going to lower this benchmark price, and that's what we've been talking about. But this is one of those features of that Olympic average, right? Because you're dropping a high and low. So even with a low price this year, it still will turn out to be the lowest price in the 5 years, and so it would drop out, and that's why we have 2 years of 529.
Yeah, because next year's price will be based on 2010 through 14. We do have that 365 or whatever that turns out to be, but that actually wouldn't get used in the average because it'd end up being the lowest in the last 5 years. So, Jonathan, there's some 365s over the next 5 years. You can see that benchmark price will come down faster. Again, every year as we move forward, we're using the most recent 5 years. So it takes time for that price to adjust if prices go up or down, but that's how the 5-year Olympic average works.
All right, can you go back there just a little
Absolutely.
bit? Absolutely. A little bit. Let's talk. So what's the outlook in 2015 here? And right now we have a 365 price in there, $174 bushel yield, and we would get a $78 payment in McLean County. Let's just put a $4 price in there. At a $4 price, we're still hitting a pretty high payment. So
that's nearly the maximum.
It's nearly the maximum. So we're $4 price and you can see here we're still getting quite a few payments there. Now let's just increase that 2015 yield to 192 bushels. So 192 bushel price or 192 bushel yield and $4 price still results in payments. And so 2015 at pretty high prices we could see some payments on this McLean County situation and in a lot of other situations as well.
Yeah, it just really illustrates, I think, how sensitive this it's a revenue program, so obviously it's very sensitive to both yield and price fluctuations. So just such a good yield year in counties like McLean and Central Illinois that, even with that 365 price, that's, well below that 529 or benchmark price for the Ark County program. The yield was so high that it's still looking like a zero payment because of those high yields.
And we can come back to this some more as we walk through the details. But that was used to generate the prices or the payment estimates here on the screen in front of us for DeKalb and McLean. And then we get your 2015 through 2018 sort of average payment. So how does, remembering this being a 5-year decision that you can't change, how does it look like over the 5 years?
So this is from APAS, and this would be from the futures price scenario. And so we're projecting for 2015 through 2018 what the average payments would be. And you can see that we're projecting for 2015 through 2018. So this is everything except 2014. So we're going out 2015, 16, 17, and 18 average payments, and we're still looking at something in the $20 to $40 an acre payment range. And it's kind of likely that over the next 4 years that there would be at least one Ark County payment, either because of a price or a yield spike that could be large, and that sort of results in those $20 to $40 an acre payment estimates across much of the everywhere.
And when you go to that, you're returning to the trend yield estimates for counties, and so we're back to what we would expect to be a little more normal yield than what we saw in 14. And I also should note a typo that I have in there. That's I apologize for that, but the website for APAS is fsa.us, apas.com. I dropped the first A, but we'll show that as well.
And so we got a question here. So under many cases, the later years of this program will have smaller or no payments. I don't know if I would go as far as to say that. If you can tell us what you think prices and yields are going to be 5 years from now, I can give you a better estimate of what I think the payment would be. But there's so much uncertainty still left with this year's price, let alone 15, 16, 17, and 18. So I think the biggest thing is to understand how these programs work, the types of situations, price conditions, and yield conditions under which payments occur, which is exactly what this spreadsheet is for that Jonathan has on the screen now. So enter in what you think prices are going to be to see how the programs would compare 4 or 5 years out into the future.
And let me give you a scenario here. All right, go into 2015. I'm going to put a massive drought in here, and we're going to have a drought this year. So 2015, and I'm not predicting this.
Usually Elwin Taylor tells us that, not you.
I just want to show you what could happen. We have a drought. We got 125 bushel yield in McLean County. That would probably go up to 525. We'll be conservative here. It could go higher than that, 525. All right, 125, you would have a $78 payment. Now, 2016, we go back and we have a bumper year of 210. And we're back to 365. So, that's the sort of that's if you look at expected yields and everything is sort of at expectations, you're right. We would expect payments to be lower, but who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years.
Right, and I think a great part of that is to make sure we always understand how the programs are operating because of that 5-year Olympic average. Those up and down years, which I think are probably more normal than not, will get factored into that program. And so you can see how it's going to continue to use that 5-year Olympic average, drop out the high and the low, and it's possible then again that the ARC program follows a little bit more of what's going on with your yields and prices. And of course, then obviously whenever that price is low, then that below that 370 gets you a PLC, and so you can certainly see. I think Gary's got. You can see all kinds of situations and scenarios you can run through here to get a sense of what the programs are going to do.
So we have another question: will FSA 2014 yields be exactly the same as NASH yields for 2014? No, that is a frustration. Here's what you can say. If you're in Illinois and Iowa, it is going to be really close. The NASH yields and what FSA comes up with are going to be really close together. And typically, if I were looking at Illinois and Iowa, I would look at NASH planted and divide by planted acres, and those would be within a bushel or two. Where that fails is in outlying areas, and where you'll see some of those is where corn silage is predominant. So Wisconsin, Ohio, and a couple other places there'll be more variation to that. So if you have some corn silage and some more failed acres, but in the heart of the Corn Belt, that will be pretty close to true. When will we know county yields for the farm program? It will be summer, so it will be after the time we have to make the March 31 deadline decision. So, NASS is what you got.
But Gary, they do use NASS production to get those FSA yields. Right. So it's not like FSA comes up with the number in a different way. I mean, they do use a different method, but they're using the same production data. They're just making some adjustments based on those things like failed acres, silage acres, and things like that. So,
yep. And by the way, I found us a scenario to trigger payments in 17 and 18 in McLean County. So, in case we wanted to see how that would work, there it is. And we'll get back there. Again, soybeans, you've got your estimated ARC County payments here. And a lot of this information is in that FarmDoc article, Gary, you wrote the other week that you're pulling these maps from. And so if you go to FarmDoc Daily or they're on the Toolbox for articles, you'll find this.
So this is soybeans, and soybeans you can see the payments that we're expecting for 2014. The blues are where we're not expecting payments, and you can see that that's most of the area where we have soybeans. There are areas in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan Nebraska, where we're seeing where you would expect to see payments on soybeans. Overall, it's going to be harder to trigger payments on soybeans than on corn, and we sort of, if you think 330, 340 is the break even for Ark County PLC on corn, it's 780 for soybeans, and
which is pretty low price for soybeans.
And let's just run an example of soybeans in here for
Before we do that, we've got a question about where you find this tool. Go to the Farm Bill Toolbox, and it's right here, your fast tools, and it's this Ark PLC comparison tool right here. Click that, download it. It's an Excel spreadsheet that you download to your computer, but it's all done. You can find it right here under the Fast Tools section of the Farm Bill Toolbox. And Gary will go back to soybeans.
Yeah, I just want to show you soybeans here. And let's just do soybeans and click Use Defaults. And this one, just put 780 in there.
All the way down?
Yeah, just do this.
And maybe another key thing, just because I think, these big yields, I think everybody's expecting big yields, but some people might have been surprised by some of the lower Ark County payments that are now projected because of those big yields. So when we talk about these breakpoints, it might be good to just emphasize that we're assuming trend yields when we look at those breakpoints. So obviously yield matters too, but we're kind of just looking at prices here, assuming we have kind of normal weather and productivity years going out here. So these break-even prices are where we think kind of Ark County and PLC would be pretty similar in terms of payments. That is assuming that we have trend yields moving forward.
But given that you're at trend yields, and this would be 780 price all the way through, and you can see here that we're still projecting larger Ark payments than we are PLC payments. So you have to get from pretty low levels before you get some payments on PLC.
So that's for McLean trend yield situation. I mean, even if we moved up the payment yield, that'll get you back closer, I think.
So
right, yeah. So 750 with a higher payment yield and trend yield at the county. So just an idea of what that breakpoint price means. I think Nick makes a good point. It's a good way to evaluate. How do you think? Nobody can be expected to guess the prices, but if you think about it in ranges or levels of prices, this breakpoint really makes a big difference because you got to be. I'm not even sure that's pessimism on soybean prices, is it? Well, that's sort of a doomsday doomsday outlook for soybean prices.
Although some people have built it, so.
And then wheat, Gary, we've run the same kind of payment estimate on wheat.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to see Ark County payments in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas this year, and Washington and Oregon. And again, those areas had very low yields. So we're looking at some relatively good payments for wheat in those areas. So, and the rest of the areas, many of the areas in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio are looking at zero. We sort of think about 550 as the break point for wheat between Ark County and PLC.
Yeah, and that's our reference price too, which makes that kind of an interesting bit for wheat. Again, here's those breakpoint prices and the reference price. So as you see, thinking all 5 years, as Nick said, and thinking trend line yields, that's how low you think prices are going to probably need to be before Ark County would give way to PLC on the average payment. Not a payment any 1 year, but the average payment over the 5. So There you see the breakpoints, and using that spreadsheet that we showed you on the FAST tools, you can get specific for your county and some yield scenarios as far as a breakpoint's concerned. Before we go back into the tools, we just want to make a couple notes on ARC Individual. We haven't said much about that program, and we gave you the basic calculations, and we'll give you the kind of our thinking about why we're not covering that too extensively. We're happy to take questions on ARC Individual if you have them. But there are some real challenges with this program, and it requires you to kind of go through some pretty detailed thinking on your farm. It's a lot harder to do the more generalized analysis we've been showing with the tools. But the couple key issues on ARC Individual, we said this before, and it really comes down to this: you're giving up 20% of your base on the payment. So right off the bat, any triggering of an ARC Individual is going to have a smaller payment than ARC County if you're looking at a revenue program, or even if you compare with PLC. Because of that, you're giving up that 20% of the base. And so then you got to start thinking, well, what's going to make up that difference? Something has to be unique about my farm or my situation that can make up that sort of loss of the base acres. Also, Gary and Nick, I think you've talked quite extensively about what this means for those that have had some experience with whole farm insurance or those sort of products.
Yeah, and again, the circumstance that where you can see this fitting in is if you have a FSA farm, one FSA farm that has one crop on it and has extremely variable yields. So a place in the Midwest is river bottom ground, where you have most of the time very good yields, and then poorer yield. That might be a place where that will fit in. The other case is if you have specialty crop production, and in that case,
well, it's a little unique out of this farm bill how they deal with specialty crops planted on base acres. In the past, you've got a blanket ban against it, and then there was a pilot program that allows some of it. What the farm bill is doing this time around is saying, look, you're getting paid on 85% or 65% of your base. So long as you don't plant specialty crops beyond 15% for the ARC County or PLC programs of your base, or beyond 35% in the case of ARC Individual, then there's no impact on your payments. If you do, however, plant more than that, then it's going to reduce your payment by the amount of base that are being planted to those specialty crops. So one of the really unique scenarios that's been pointed out with ARC Individual is if you are planting some specialty crops, so tomatoes or pumpkins in some of the Midwest counties that we know of, there might be an advantage that will give you more flexibility to plant those specialty crops without impacting your program payment with FSA. And so that's another one of those kind of unique scenarios we've found that might factor in or weigh in favor of the ARC Individual program.
Yeah, and I mean, my interpretation of one of the main reasons the ARC Individual program is part of the Farm Bill is kind of really getting at that highlighted point there about unique circumstances. So farms where the county does not represent you very well. Again, we can think of different examples where that's the case, but the examples I hear are big counties out west in the U.S. where the county is so big that the county average means nothing. A farm in the north end of the county is a lot different than a farm in the south end. Maybe your average yields are well above the county average. Maybe they're a lot more volatile than the county average. So that's kind of what we're talking about there when we talk about extreme yields. But basically cases where the county just does not do a good job of representing your farm in terms of yield risk, revenue risk, are cases where looking at ARC Individual is probably worth some time.
Yeah. And in that case, we suggest using the build your own farm aspect of APAS, that we can show you where that is. And again, we by no means want to downplay the program or say there aren't some circumstances or cases where it would really work or work better. But we do want to be clear that there are some challenges for it in this consideration. But every farm is unique, and you might have some cases where that's really going to work. So we'd encourage you to consider it and think through how it might operate. And with that, I think we've come to the end of the presentation materials. We can go back to Ark County, the comparison tool, the PLC comparison tool, and we also want to show the agricultural policy analysis system. So I'm going to jump onto the internet, and let's go to APAS. If you start off with the Toolbox, APAS is right here. It links through right here. We've got it up on the screen. This is what APAS, here's the front page for the APAS system. And I'm going to go to, oops, you want to try DeKalb here first, Gary? We'll come back to that in just a second. We do want to note some of the updates that have gone on for the APAS tool. The first one that just going to tell you is this new futures FAPRI hybrid price. What's going on there is that we're pulling the Chicago Board of Trade December contract for corn and the soybeans November contract and the Chicago Board's July contract for wheat for 15 to 18. Again, those are the raw prices off the board, the raw futures prices, no adjustments, no changes made. They're there, again, just to give another point of reference or another way to look at potential prices going out. In this case, using the market's predictions, if you will, of where prices will be. And we'll update those pretty frequently in this tool. Again, the sample farms is going to look at historical crop acres, planted acres, scale it to about $500,000 in revenue to get you a farm. Those are the base acres then that we're going to plug into the model. You can see here we've updated with our county yields, and we've got prices updated as we get those new price estimates. But if we're in DeKalb County for all crops, you can see Ark County over 1 year, over the 5 year, Ark individual, 1 year and 5 year, PLC, and then when you get in the 5 year, you can see SCO show up on top in the optimized program there here on the far side. If you want to see what prices we're looking at, here's that futures hybrid. So you see for corn, we're getting up above $4 out in 2015 and beyond, and so that's a big factor on how that's looking. If we look at payments per acre, this will be similar to what we showed on the screen earlier, where you see the 1 year horizon in Ark County for DeKalb, PLC corn. And keeping in mind with Ark individual, it's all crops, so it doesn't compare on a crop-by-crop basis. So anytime you are not using all crops, you're going to lose the Ark individual estimates.
So now hit the 5 year horizon just to show what that would look like over a 5 year horizon. So that was 2014. This is looking at 2015 and sort of looking at those payments for DeKalb County. So, and you can do the same thing. That's DeKalb County. Let's just show McLean County again, just for
show that difference. What difference the yield will make in 14. Go back to the 1 year. So again, here we see the yield show up. Now, here's another example of the modeling. If the actual NASS yield of 217 and a 361 in this case price. We are showing potential payments in our county, but that's more of the uncertainty factors in the model and how we look at that versus what you saw on the spreadsheet. But you do see that those yields then factor in and bring that price down. But over the 5 year horizon then.
Yep. So gives you an overview of those prices for that time period. Will the results here differ from that in the Ark County tool? And yeah, they will, because you're putting in your own prices, and that will cause those estimates to vary. This is a what if, whereas the other one is a stochastic estimate of what prices are looking at.
Right, and I think you see that difference. So if you put in the 217 and the 360, actually it was 361 was using that FAPRI number. So you can see that, and then if you compare it to what APAS is showing, what APAS is showing, this is your example of how the modeling effort works compared to this exact yield price calculation. So you're still going to see the potential for ARC County payments, even with those higher yields, because we don't yet know what the final yields and prices are going to be, and so
the prices being the big part of that.
Right, prices being a big part of. So what the model's doing then is just making some what do you call it? Some sort of representation of potential error or potential the probability that things are different than what you plugged in this case.
Yeah, I think maybe just to explain it yet another way, the spreadsheet program we're looking at is, like Gary said, a what if. What if price is this? What if yield is this? So it's true that at 365 and 217 there would not be a payment, but there's still a chance that price could come down. So you can see if that price ended up being 350, we'd be looking at a $20 payment. At 355, a $10 payment. So there's that uncertainty, the fact that prices could vary still around that 365 price or 361 price or whatever the average was in the price scenario Jonathan had entered in the APAS tool. That potential to vary around that expected price level is why you're seeing a payment show up here compared with the zero payment you saw in the spreadsheet.
And of course, an example of that CBO I think is at 350, so it's a little bit lower price even. So that's what we're seeing in the models, and it's just again a couple different ways to get a sense of the programs, understand how they operate, and so we have erred for better or worse on more information is better or more options is better to sort it out.
I think there was a question we had about the payment estimates we showed in the maps that Gary had made, whether they would agree with the APAS sample farm tool. Do you have anything to say about that, Gary? I mean, they're actually more what-if payments, right? Specific prices, specific yields.
Specific prices, specific yields, except for the one map, which just does come from APAS, and those will agree. So
it's always fun trying to describe stochastic modeling to people. But,
yeah, there's never a shortage of challenges to sort of sort through with this. But again, you can, I think, and Gary, you said it too, you can pretty much drive yourself crazy on the spreadsheet and try to be your own forecaster on prices, yields, and different levels and where those might be. And really all you're doing is you go through 1,000 or so of your own estimates on the spreadsheet is you're going to arrive in some form or fashion probably about where these numbers come out. So if you want to think of it that way, we've taken some of the hair pulling exercise of guessing prices and yields on the spreadsheet and done it over 1,000 times or more to give you this sort of rough estimate of an outcome, given the fact that none of us have any idea where prices or yields are going to be, because if we did, we'd probably be doing something different. So with that, we've come to the end of the webinar. We've shown, again, where the materials exist, everything you could possibly want, or everything we've put together at least. You'll find it here. Somebody asked about webinars and archive. They will be here. You'll see the ones that we've got 2 more webinars scheduled coming up in the next 2 weeks, and then we'll go quiet as you get to the deadline. In that case, they'll all be archived right here if you would like to go back and revisit those. You can also find them within the 7 steps process as you go through. You've got the tool links, the fast tool links, your frequently asked questions, articles, and webinars all linked there, as well as just summaries and overviews of the decision and the steps. So if we have no more questions coming in, we appreciate everybody taking time out of their morning to sit with us and go through the farm program decisions. And we got 2 more coming up, and we'll go from there.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
It'll be warmer next time we do this.